Shalom, good people. This is Apostle T checking in with you. Wanted to build on the concept of pre-preparation for ministry. Pre-preparation for ministry. Many of you have been called to do great things, and the Lord really has already been preparing you. A lot of the work He's been preparing you in was prior to your salvation. It was prior to your conversion. Prior to when you really got serious about the things of the Lord, He was already preparing you through situations, circumstances, events, occurrences, relationships, happenings, things that He allowed you to see. The great thing about Him is that He knows how to bring things to your remembrance and bring things back to you that you need to know at the right time so that you can see how it works with His divine plan. So what I wanted to do, because I don't believe I've ever done this audibly on social media, what I wanted to do is kind of chronicle some things prior to my apostleship and chronicle some things prior to my rededication, if you will, and talk about how the Lord weaves things together and how your life story really is painting a picture of what He wants to accomplish. And you know, the scripture says He's the author and the finisher of our faith, but you got to understand that if He started it, then He doesn't start it at the moment where we confess Him. He's already started it. He started it way before you came on the scene and you fit into His wonderful tapestry, but He is definitely the author. So what I want to talk about is my journey and my traveling in a cult. I had the privilege of being able to live amongst, work with, promote the ideals of, the economy of, and the lasciviousness of a traveling cult. It was under the guise of a magazine culture where we would sell magazines, traveling magazine salesmen. But let me go back a little bit. For you to understand this, you have to understand the context that brought me to that place. Growing up in a Christian home, knowing the Word, having been exposed to the Word of faith, having been exposed to evangelical teaching, having been exposed to some charismatic teachings, being people of color, being brought into an understanding of some spiritual things by virtue of being in a culture. We were in a culture of a lot of Caucasians. There was some bunny hopping and some other things going on, and my parents were seeking more, and they were going from the Baptist realm, moving into Pentecostalism, getting hooked up with Kojic, and then moving from there into these non-denominational groups. And so that was their journey. Now I'm a young teen coming up, and I grew up on gospel, but at the same time I'm being exposed to hip-hop and everything that's going on. So while my parents are bringing the family into a predominantly white congregation with a few black people in it, and I'm used to being in the Kojic church, in my ear I'm listening to Wu-Tang, Mobb Deep, you know what I'm saying, Tupac, Biggie, Bone Thugs and Harmony. I'm listening to whoever's out there, the Fugees, whoever, listening to them. So that's what's in my spirit, and because I could sing a little bit and was around some people who could rap, my desire was to be a singer / rap artist, be a icon, so there was an event that happened that it was already going to happen anyway, but I just broke out, left the house, and moved down to Atlanta because we was going to try to get signed to LaFace Records and get a deal, and there's a lot of stuff that went along with that. But it ended up happening that things didn't work out at the house I was staying at. It's a lot of homosexual activity going on. I couldn't stay there. I wasn't comfortable sleeping there, and I ended up breaking out. So thank God it was summertime. But I was in the streets of Atlanta homeless for a little while in the summer. And there were some experiences with that. Working at fast food place, trying to get out of there. I was reaching out to my cousin. And my cousin's husband was in the military, so they moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming. So Cheyenne, Wyoming, if you know anything about that, it's not too much of us out there. And the ones that's out there, and I say us, it's not too much, African Americans, melanated people, whatever you want to say, out there. But the ones who were out there weren't really urbanites, I'll say it like that. So I had just moved out there for just about a week, and somebody knocks on the door. This white guy knocks on the door saying, "Hey, do you want to buy a magazine? We're trying to win a trip to Cancun, but we need a certain amount of points." And I'm like, "Nah, I don't have the money for a magazine." But he said, "Well, do you want to work with us? We travel all around the country selling magazines. We stay in the finest hotels." Peace, King. What's up, DJ Wiggles? We stay in the finest hotels. We got a lot of girls out there. It's a lot of partying. You can smoke all you want. If you sniff, you can do all that, all you want. It's all available. And I was like, that sounds dope right there. I can stay in a hotel every day. We can travel around the country selling magazines. And then there's, in my mind, I'm just keeping it raw right now, but, and there's hoes at the crib, at the hotel. I'm in. I'm all in. So I just left my cousin. I didn't even let her know. I just left her and went straight to the magazine company, the quote-unquote magazine company. So now I'm a part of this magazine crew. The first day I get there, it's so much herb out there. It's ridiculous. So much herb. Now, at this point, the only thing I know about is drinking and smoking. That's, smoking weed only. I'm not really on the primos or nothing like that, or the woos. But, these are the majority of these are white people, and and I'm not trying to stereotype, but they party different. They party different. So the first night I'm out there, it's like, we know about running trains, but it's straight up orgies going on. It's cocaine parties going on. And it's basically like, pick what you want to do. Whatever you want to do, we got it. Just pick what you want to do. So me being the curious person I am, I wanted to do all of it. I wanted to do all of it. Only thing I wasn't with was the homosexual stuff. But if it was some orgies in there, I'm with it. Right? If there was some cocaine, I like watching Scarface. I always, as a matter of fact, as a kid, I used to put salt on the table and roll up some dollars and sniff up some salt, just, to get that burn, to pretend like I was Scarface. So they have real cocaine out there. And some of them was on methamphetamines. I didn't know nothing about that yet. But basically, whatever you wanted to do, you could do. So I was there to have fun, and I guess I was the token black dude. I was the token black dude from South Carolina who was in the hip-hop around a whole lot of Midwesterners and, just some strange Colorado, Montana type white folks. But they knew how to party. And so they introduced me to rock and roll and Nirvana and, all that whole other thing. So I'm going to try to speed this story up. Eventually, by the time it was all said and done, my regular practice was we would go out and sell magazines in different neighborhoods in the daytime, right? And then at night we would have our orgy parties, and we would do whatever we was doing, and then I got hooked on the cocaine and on the methamphetamines, and that was just a normal thing. But it seemed like, now I'm telling this story, you know, a lot of people tell their testimonies, but they tell it like, man, you know, I was in so much bondage. Now, I was in bondage, but all of that was fun to me. None of that was boring. All of that was fun. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. You know, I was like, man, I've been missing out on this all this time. I loved the experiences I was having when I was taking acid, and I was having encounters, and I'm getting ahead of myself now about the spiritual side of it. But basically, now I'm getting open. All kind of drugs are open, and that's what we're doing. Then we go out to sell magazines, and I'm thinking that we're really selling magazines, right? I'm thinking that that's what we're really doing. The whole time, you know, there was a time where I briefly stopped back at the house, you know, to visit my parents, because we would traffic on Suburbans, right? And let me tell you about this. So let me just break down this culture. The way the culture was set up was like, you had maybe 4 or 5 people to one room, and it wasn't hotels, it was really motels, so they lied to me on that. But you had about 4 or 5 people in one room, and based on how many sales you made, determine whether you could sleep on the bed, or if you slept on the floor, or slept on some couch or something like that. So if you were the top seller of the day, you could sleep on the bed by yourself. But you know, there's a lot of other people in there. If you bummed out, then you slept on the floor. If you might have got a pillow, or you may not have got a pillow. That's just how it was. Also, same thing with the Suburbans. So we used to ride around in these big Suburbans, 15, 16 different people in Suburbans, and the top seller could sit in the front seat. The people who sold the least, those were the bums and the scrubs, so they had to sit either all the way in the back or on the tire of the Suburban. So, and we used to get up like about 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning and go into meeting rooms or wherever we were to set up at, and they would have these little circles where we all would get in circles, and they had the team leaders who would kind of pump us up and amp us up and tell us, you know, I am worthy, you know, I am confident, you know, I can sell anything, you know, and then we just go through these mantras or whatever we were saying back then. You know, my name is Terrence Frederick. I went by some alias name back then because I didn't want them to know who I really was, but my name is whatever. And I came in, we were rehearsing our spill. So I get to win a trip to Cancun if I just get 1,000 more points, and you know, every sale is 500 points. You know, we would always be lying. Nobody went to Cancun. So if you ever have anybody knocking at your door talking about they trying to win a trip to Cancun, I'm gonna say, well, maybe they don't know they're lying, but I'm gonna tell you the company is lying. Them people ain't going to Cancun. They would, at times, they would fool you out and have some of the top salesmen just go back home for a visit for a week or two and make it seem like they went to Cancun. But of course, at this level, I'm at the bottom level, so I'm believing everything. I'm at the very bottom. I don't know what's going on. All I know is it's fun. We selling magazines, and whether we sell or not, we still got a place to stay. So that's kind of like jail. You know, you still got a roof over your head, and you still got free travel. You know, so that was my mindset at the time. I'm meeting all these different people. What they used to like to highlight is they would pick up on runaways. So they would target people who were like 16, 15, some of them 17, who left their house, ran away, you know, stragglers who was just trying to get away. So we picked up all kind of different people all the time. It was all kind of people trafficking through. One of them was a Satanist. And there was more there were 2 Satanists, and then there was a Wiccan, and then there were some people into they were Native Americans, so they were into some extra, some all kind of stuff. So this is my first time I'm getting exposed to the depths of Satanism. They had Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible, and they would do chants, and they would get deep into that kind of stuff. So let me tell you something. If you're high on methamphetamines for a whole week, there was one time I couldn't sleep for a week. I was high out of my mind. So on methamphetamines, and you smoking, and you doing acid, and then somebody comes to you and starts reading the Satanic Bible to you, I want to let you know you're going to encounter some things. Now, see, the people who don't know nothing about that, they'll just say, well, yeah, you was just high. But you got to understand that stuff just opens up portals, is what it does. It opens portals up. So I had encounters with principalities and demons and voices speaking out of the book, and dude reading the book backwards perfectly, making sense, spirits coming out, all kind of encounters like that. There was one time I had an encounter, and I was so high that that I had to go to I fell out at the gas station. They're pumping that charcoal down my throat to revive me. But it was real like that. But the crazy thing is, because, just to skip a little bit, we weren't selling magazines. Really, the company was smuggling drugs, smuggling all kind of stuff from state to state. The guy who was the quote-unquote owner of the operation was a repeat felon, and he made a hustle out of conning people. And so for us, it was just a magazine thing, but really, he was moving weight. And I finally got to a place where I was selling pretty good enough to be where I could sleep on the bed constantly, and I could go in the back meetings, and I could know what was really going on, at least at the level I was at before I got arrested. So this thing is going on, right? And now I'm realizing this is more than just a drug thing. It's more than just a sex thing. This is a satanic thing. Now, why would the Lord do that? Why would the Lord allow? I grew up in the church. I knew the word. I knew about the supernatural, even though I hadn't really encountered the supernatural like that yet. Then what began to start happening, and I think I'm going to break this up into more than one, but I'll reach an end point at this in a little bit. But what began to start happening was I would knock on doors, and like a psychic would see me, or like we went to one place where they had the psychic readings. Now, when I say psychics, I don't want you to think TV psychics or these psychics that you run across in your city, just regular psychics. I'm talking about Native American, real folks who really, gypsies and people who knew how to tap in, mediums. That's what I'm talking about. So they had this person that they would go to. I went to the lady, and she said, I cannot read you. I see you, but I cannot read you. And then she would tell me that there were two angels around me and that I didn't belong to them. And so she can't speak to that. I'm not permitted. Now, you got to understand, this wasn't impressive to me because I'm angry with the lady. Everybody else is getting palm readings. They're getting, tarot card readings. They're getting their goods. And basically she's telling me, you're not good enough to participate because I don't belong. I find out later that my parents had prayer warriors praying for me day and night until I came back home. But I was in rebellion, and I wasn't in touch with them. So I wouldn't have known that until later. But the psychic, so now I'm being cut off. When we were back in the day, a little bit prior to that, I did have some exposure to the to the Ouija boards, and experienced some of that. And I was, it made me curious, but I was like, it ain't really too much of nothing. The spirit did what you've probably seen the movies, and that stuff really happens, and the automatic writing and that kind of stuff. But it wasn't on the level of what I'm talking about now. This was heavy stuff. So these people were deep in. And there was another encounter. I was in New York in Staten Island. I knock on the door, and a lady opened up the door and said, "Why are you here? You should be home. You should be home. You are out of the will of God." This is a prophet that's speaking to me. Now, keeping in mind, once again, I don't want to hear this. And so in order to seem like I'm deep or like I know what, I'm on her level, she said, "Can I pray for you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So she starts speaking in her heavenly language. So then I'm all in rebellion now, but just because I want to show her that I'm on that level, I start speaking in tongues too. And I start going there with her and just making it seem like, I know what's up. And then she began to start prophesying to me and saying, "You're out of place. You left in rebellion. You need to get your house in order. You need to go back now. Some things are going to happen that you're going to have to deal with." I had a little baby at home that I wasn't taking care of at that time, newborn, but I was out there wilding out. She was home. So all this stuff was going on. And, these things were just the things to introduce me to the prophetic and to the apostolic. And there are many people, I'm going to take a pause here. I'll get into my story later because it gets a lot deeper than this. But there are many people who have been exposed to the demonic realm. And you might know some people now that may be into some false stuff. But the Lord can use all of that for his glory. Because what that did for me is expose me to the spirit realm where I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, demons are real. Principalities are real. When I saw angels manifested, that's real. When I had real demonic encounters, that was real. There was this Wiccan girl who I used to deal with, and she left her body. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy. I already know. So this ain't for everybody, but, it happened. She left her body. I had astral body sex with her, but she wasn't in the flesh. But she had an astral body, and she would meet me and come visit me and have encounters with me. She was a Wiccan. Now, understand, Wiccans don't see themselves as Satanists. They see themselves like naturalists. They're one with the earth, and they deal with energies and all this kind of stuff. So she wouldn't have looked at what she was doing as satanic, but she was just tapping into the laws of the cosmos. And of course, they had their own language that came along with that. For me, it's just cool. I'm just like, I'm amazed. I'm blown away. But like in the spirit, when things happen to you spiritually, when you think about it in your natural, rational mind, you think, wow, that's crazy. I would have been, geeked out. But when it's happening in real time and it's spiritual manifestations of things, it's almost like it brings you into a realm where that's normal, where it feels normal at the time. So even though it's weird, even though it's crazy to talk about, I even feel crazy talking about it right now, but when you know it happened, when you know it was real, you just, it is what it is. But see, the Lord allowed me to get deep into that because he wanted to baptize me. He wanted to immerse me in the spirit realm so I could understand. This was all about me knowing who I was in the spirit. And it was all about me knowing who I was called to in the spirit. And it was all about me understanding the dimensions of the spirit so that it would not just be something that I read in a book. It wouldn't just be something that I saw somebody else talking about or hearing about. He had to allow me to, I won't say he had to, he could have chosen another way, but he allowed me to go to school in the supernatural by living amongst young people who were highly skilled in street knowledge, in scamming, in hustling people's minds, and who were open spiritually. But because I didn't know who I was, I couldn't lead them. Because I didn't know who I was, I couldn't bring them out of darkness. So basically I had to succumb to the powers that be. So that's what's going on. So there are many people, back to my last point, there are many people who haven't had encounters in the supernatural, And the church will, try to a lot of times say, there's no hope for them and they're into this, into that. But they can be saved. And all of that, whenever they do come into Christ, just think about how much knowledge that they bring into Him. They come into it understanding that the spirit realm is already real. They don't have to be convinced of that. Whenever the demons get cast out of them, like demons had to be cast out of me, it's not a, you don't have to convince anybody of that, because they were already living in that world, living in that realm. And this is why a lot of times God will call people who were into those scenes, into the apostolic, into the prophetic. I don't have time to convince people that this stuff is real. I just need people who have been in bondage to that system. Yeah, I do feel crazy talking about it. But those who have been in bondage to the system, bondage to the powers that be, when that person gets delivered and brought out, you understand that they bring a faith that is not like textbook faith. It's a reality for them. It's life. It's life for them. Okay, it might be going out because I'm driving around the city. So I said I was going to pause for a minute and do a part 2. So that'll be a good time for me to do that. And then I'll pick it back up. But yeah, these are my stories, just talking about how the Lord has brought me. He introduced me. He took me to school into the supernatural by allowing me to go into captivity. I'll be back though.